Let's head back to our top story, that High Court ruling on the ballot paper tender. And joining me now in studio are Apollo Mboya and Kibe Mungai, who are both lawyers, have been following the proceedings very keenly. We have just 31 days to go to Election Day. Is this a recipe for a constitutional crisis? Apollo, let me start with you.
Not at all. It's a great day. It's a great day because a three-bench judge of the High Court has reaffirmed that there is required public participation in public procurement. That's a major victory. There is enough time, and the court has said as much. And they said you can do direct procurement, but you must adhere to the constitutional principles and also the values of public participation, especially on an issue as a motive and of public interest as printing of ballot papers.
Kibe, what do you make of this ruling? Do we have enough time?
One, we do not have enough time, and I believe this is a clear recipe for chaos and disorder. The Constitution is very clear that the IEBC is given the full mandate to be responsible for conducting and supervising elections. Now, there is a sense in which part of the role of the IEBC is to conduct who will print the ballot papers.
Right.
I don't think candidates have any legitimate concern as long as the procurement laws are followed to know who is procuring it. The whole idea why even last year we almost fought over the issue of the independence and neutrality of the IEBC is to ensure that you have a commission which can make such simple technical decisions like who is going to print the ballot papers. But if you say that there is no decisions of IEBC that will not be second-guessed by the players, in this case the political parties, you take the matter to the High Court, and the High Court, in the name of public participations, you start and have a complete misreading of the law. I think it's a big tragedy. I do not for any moment begrudge the so-called victory of NASA. But what for the time being appears to be a NASA victory is a big tragedy for this country. Because what he says is that for the first time, the law has been read to read the issue of public participation in procurement. Let truth be told, procurements happens every day. Sometimes it's for mandazi, for tea, even for books. Now, if you say that you are going to have public participation, procurement is about commercial interest, that you are a printer and I'm a printer. There is a body of law made by Parliament dedicated to resolve any dispute over procurement. But now, if you say, like the High Court has said, that political parties are interested parties in the procurement of presidential ballot papers, effectively what you are saying, and let's call a spade, is that NASA has been given what I call veto powers, so that if you do not like A as a printer, then they can say we don't like it. And the effect of it, let me finish this. The effect of this is that if IEBC you go and you disagree with the so-called interested party, in this case, which basically means NASA, you may not meet the deadlines.
All right.
And it's a tragedy if you ask me.
And speaking of deadline, because we have the IEBC actually reacting to this, and Apollo, I'll get your reaction to that. IEBC said it will appeal the court decision on a printing of the presidential ballot papers, arguing that the judgment has far-reaching implications on the elections. IEBC says the decision was regrettable given the urgency to prepare for free, fair and credible elections in 30 days. All right, so they're going to appeal. This could further delay the process.
That's correct. IEBC made its bed, it must lie on it. Why am I saying that? The Public Procurement Oversight Review Board had quashed an award that had been given to the same Al Ghurair because of, again, procedural issues and also areas where IEBC acted outside the statute. Again, the High Court had also done this similar thing. They had also again and quashed it. Okay? Having done that, in order to defeat all those decisions of the High Court and the Public Procurement Board, they went ahead again, and in a rush, awarded direct procurement to the same firm.
Right.
Okay. IEBC had tailor-made its mind to award this contract to a particular vendor outside even the constitutional provision that requires that where they make a decision to go for public procurement, where yet we require competitive procurement,
Exactly.
they should have consulted the public. And now, to go further, one of the presidential candidates, and we have to say this because the judges also talked about it, one of the presidential candidates was never consulted, was never invited. And I'm not ashamed to say that the presidential candidate is a Kura of court.
Right.
And there was uncontroverted evidence to that assertion.
And he was enjoined in that
And he
case
wasn't,
as well.
yes, he joined himself.
So keeping...
And it is true. And IEBC admitted they never invited him whenever they consulted other political
So keeping
parties.
all of that into account, because you have to have public participation, involve all the presidential candidates, re-advertising the tender.
Yes.
Do we have enough time, realistically?
We have. And I'm insisting we have, because the judges have told IEBC, you can even go direct procurement. Tomorrow, you can do it, but do it within the confines of law of public participation. And public participation as a principle and as a value that is provided in Article 10 is not just a flowery language there. It is supposed to be adhered to. And the argument that there are no rules with regard to public participation in public procurement does not bar any public institution from adhering to the constitutional provision. That is the upshot of that judgment.
Okay, Kiba, your reaction to that?
Yeah, you see my reactions to this. Effectively, what we are saying is that an entity other than Al Ghurair will have to print presidential ballot papers. If you say that you do this public procurement, assuming that you say C is the one that is going to print, because at the end of the day, IEBC will have to make the decision.
Right.
Then there is disagreement by one of the people that you have consulted. Then they will still have some right to go to court, and not necessarily under the laws of procurement, which there is a body of law and a tribunal that exists for that purpose.
Right.
You can even go back to the High Court. So that on the issues of time, and here, now I can put some credence to the story that you've been hearing around the conspiracy theories, that at the end of the day, things are being pushed to a scenario whereby it becomes impossible to have presidential elections on 8th of August. And to this, I can give credibility, because if there is any controversy, and I can guarantee you, there would have to be controversy unless tomorrow NASA is told, can you choose for us a printer to print these presidential ballot papers?
Okay.
And I think short of that, it is guaranteed that there will be controversy.
Okay, so what...
Any further controversy, and even the whole idea of whether the normal timelines on doing this procurement will be there, I don't think it will be there.
So now with the August 8th deadline having to be adhered to, it's set in stone in the Supreme Law. If we don't make that date, what happens?
Now, if we don't make that date, which I still don't believe it's going to be impossible, we'll still make that date. On the question on that there's not enough time. Now, it is IEBC that is actually squeezing that time further. Remember, they want to appeal, okay? They should start complying with the constitutional provisions from today. They have just been reminded. If they want still to squeeze that time, then they're the ones who are making it hard for themselves, because it's not guaranteed, again, Victoria, that if you go to the Court of Appeal is going to agree with them and they're going to succeed in the appeal. If the Court of Appeal, again, within their time, and we don't know me sitting here and my legal colleague seated here, we don't know even the timeline of the Court of Appeal. They have to say when they are going to listen to the matter, the arguments are going to be done, and when they're going to render their judgment.
Right.
We are not guaranteed that they're going to succeed in that. And it might be upheld that the decision of the High Court then stays. They would have lost time. And
there's been speculation that there are political interests by some not wanting to have elections at all and wanting to frustrate the process. What do you make of that?
It must be IEBC, because NASA is saying that comply and please, let's go ahead with the election. leave this thing of appealing. Yes.
Okay.
The issue is this. I think IEBC has already said that it will be very difficult for it to do another procurement and in time to conduct the elections. Personally, if we have said we have an independent IEBC that has even security of tenure, certain decisions must be made by this commission, then we fault it at the end of the process. But let us also remember something critically important. This ought to be an argument, it's procurement, between two printers. Now, even the case before the court, if truth be told, and when we stripped it of all these shenanigans about public participations, it is really an argument whereby a procurement, a commercial printer could not be able to go to challenge these things directly before the procurement tribunals. And it decided now to shield behind a political party in order to go and make those arguments. So that at the end of the day, the old story that now you will effectively, courtesy of the High Court, be having to put up two fights. You can do one fight before the Public Procurement Review Tribunal, and then get a mwananchi or any other entity like NASA, hide behind it, and pretend that the constitutions have not been violated. The constitutions was never made for that purpose. Finally, on the important issues that we are saying about these conspiracy theorists, the IEBC has every right to file an appeal, because for me, I'm prepared to say this. If in other countries we have said, the soldiers messed Uganda, the soldiers messed Somalia. If there is any problems about the elections of the general elections of Kenya next year, we also need to give the judiciary a full chance so that we can say, if anybody messed it up with it, let us also hold the judiciary accountable for this. But there is a genuine conspiracy and a genuine risk to the stability.
And I see Apollo smiling at that comment. I'll have you respond in just a minute. Political parties have reacted to the ruling by the High Court in different ways. The opposition, NASA, says the ruling is a great gift to Kenyans by the courts and is of extraordinary magnitude to Kenya's electoral transparency and fairness. Let's take a look at that. What do you make of that? NASA is very satisfied, of course, with this judgment.
Yes. You got veto powers.
Go ahead, Apollo, and respond.
Rightly so. They have to be happy because NASA starts on the side of the Constitution. And the Constitution is the one that outlines national values as public participation. Now, what we are seeing from IEBC is that they don't want to comply with the constitutional provision. And they're just being reminded that even in this kind of issues, there's a requirement for public participation. And again, my learned colleague here has set a subtle threat to the judiciary. That judiciary should be held accountable. In fact, it's the other way around. If the elections are messed up, the people who messed it up, like IEBC, needs to be held accountable and be put in jail.
In fact, the court is the one that said that the constitutional crisis is not at all with the people or any other party, but the IEBC.
No. I think in scenarios like this, we would allow for any such comments to be made, because after all, it is not your baby. But because where we are going, what I accept is this proposition, that there is one law for procurement of presidential ballot material, and another law for the rest of the general election. So that if the printing of the other election materials can proceed without this so-called public participation, but these other one cannot, then we shall not be told how did it come about that what is good for the gander is no longer good for the goose. I think there's a problem in that. And it is clear here that the issue, the problematic elections has always been the presidential elections. The elections that, according to this conspiracy theory, is that wants to be frustrated is the presidential elections. And I see this happening. So that when I say that the role of the courts would have to be investigated in this, it is because the consistent decisions from the High Court to the Supreme Court have been where Parliament has appointed a body to engage in a certain, to discharge a certain powers. That body must be left alone as much as possible to perform its function.
So it's showing bias in its rulings,
but now when it comes to IEBC, I could never even believe that NASA was going to get this one. But when NASA got this one...
Hold that thought, because we're going to go into another tangent with this.
Yes.
Okay, hold that thought. Let's take a short break here.
Thank you very much. Now, just to put a basis on what I'm going to say, the Public Procurement and Oversight Review Board indicated that their jurisdiction is only with regard to public procurement. However, on constitutional question that touches on that public procurement, they invited the High Court to look at that. And the High Court now has made this decision the way it has done. That is what the Public Procurement Oversight Board said. Now, on this question that I see Honorable Murade has just said, in fact, the judges addressed that question and say it is not a question of the sky falling, okay, and that there will be no sun tomorrow, or that we won't wake up. That is not the issue. The issue is the Constitution. The Constitution actually entails the aspiration of the people. Now, if that's the aspiration of the people, then we must abide by it. 8th of August will come. There will be election on 8th of August, but it must be done within the confines of the law. What Murada is saying that let's just do election whether there are constitutional questions.
Right.
Yeah, and that is not, the judges are saying no, the aspiration of the people is entailed in the Constitution. We must abide by it even as much as we want that election. And
speaking of those confines that this process should be going through public participation, there's a viewer who asked, how will it actually be carried out?
Okay,
Polo.
Thank you, Kibe, for because I was there and I was part of the legal team.
Yes.
Now, the court again addressed its mind to that issue and said, we are not going to prescribe, because the other side had argued successfully that there are no guidelines for public participation in procurement matters. And for that reason, the court said, okay, the fact that there is no guidelines on that, so we are at a loss how it's supposed to be done. We refuse to prescribe a particular mode with which the IEBC should conduct itself, because IEBC is an independent body. And for that reason, they should read the Constitution. We are not going to direct them on what to do because they're independent. They should look at the matter at hand and then prescribe the public participation model that can better suit
so
this particular
basically, the ball is in the IEBC's court.
That's
closing comments, Kibe.
Precisely. Three quick things. Starting with what he's saying, and I wanted him to state first, is clearly that the law says, under the Constitution Article 88, that the IEBC will discharge its powers in accordance with the Constitution.